Hey everyone, welcome to Lighthouse Revolution headquarters. We're doing a spotlight session today on the topic of intuition and spiritual practice. And I am so excited because I've got my friend ricci-jane Adams here with us today. She is the founder of the intuitive, I can never remember how to say it, Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. I always want to flip the words around. The Intuitive Intelligence Institute.
That sounds good too.
That's what ricci-jane Adams does, and she's the author of this amazing book,
Yes.
Spiritually Fierce, which you can see mine is a very well-loved copy, even though I've only had it for a few weeks. It's fantastic, and ricci-jane is amazing, and I'm so excited to have you here with us on this topic.
Thank you.
Sorry about getting the name of your institute wrong.
No, I have completely registered both business names because
good.
I actually use them sometimes, like on all my social media. It's Intuitive Intelligence Institute.
Okay,
so
good.
many I's in there. But yeah,
I was like, oh God, I think I said that wrong. I had to actually look at the back of your book. No, the whole point is about intuitive intelligence, and that's what you're teaching in this book. Yeah. And I have to say, before I get into the questions I have for you, I just think, ricci-jane, that you are such a beautiful, shining example of a woman who is rising up, standing tall, taking the next steps with your message and your mission, and showing up in bigger and bigger ways. And you just inspire me with what you do. And I'm really honored to have you here so that together we can keep shining that light further and further, giving other people permission to shine as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you. That makes me feel really good. This is the best day ever so far.
Well, I love to, with these spotlight sessions, I love to shine a light on a topic, and that's what we're doing here today. But I also love to shine a light on people who are lighthouses in the world. Yeah. And you are one of those people. So thank you for being here. So my first question I wanted to ask you about, and I wanted to share with my audience of lighthouse keepers, is exactly what you've got here. This idea of being spiritually fierce, because I love the way you describe it in the book and in the work you do online. So I'm wondering if you could just explain to us first what you mean by that idea of being spiritually fierce, but also why it matters. Like, why is this something that we should recognize as being important in our journey?
Yeah, it is a really, it's a slightly contentious term, and sometimes people will say, isn't that the opposite of what spirituality is? We're not fierce, we're loving and we're gentle, or we're, powerful, but not in a fierce way. And for me, it's so obvious what it is that it's actually really good to kind of be asked, okay, well, what are you actually saying here? And in the book, of course, we break it down, but the idea at its core is the capacity or the willingness to choose love first. And my darling, that takes so much fierceness. It takes so much courage, because the world is telling us that we have every right to stay in our shit. We have every right to defend our victim status. We have every right not to show up and shine. Look what's happened to me. Look at what the world has done to me. Look at the state of the world right now. Everything is telling me that it's okay for me to just stay in my shadow, in my darkness. But spirituality for me has never been about fluffy rainbows and pink unicorns. It's about, how do I have the fire, the heat within me that will allow me to be a warrior of light, to choose love first, when it would be so much easier to defend my victimhood, to defend my saboteur, to believe my unworthiness. And it requires fierceness, because that the whole world is working against us, and yet we need to, why it matters is because, as you say, for every woman, for every person who finds that fierceness inside of them, who finds that spiritual fire, whether it's spiritual or whether it's just that fierceness to rise up against doubt and uncertainty, they cause a ripple effect in the world that turns the world from fear to love. We do not do this work for ourselves alone. And it's vital that if we are being called to stand in our leadership and to stand in our light, that we do not resist that calling, because the world is, I don't know if you noticed, the world is in chaos right now. And we're making a choice. We're really at a crossroads, I believe. We can go two ways. It's not too late. But when we resist our own light, when we resist our own power, we're making a choice to stay in the darkness. And that is the ripple effect we cause. So that's why choosing love first every single time is the fiercest possible choice. And you got to back yourself up.
Oh, we speak the same language. Yeah, so many of the expressions you just use are just so similar to what we talk about in the Lighthouse Revolution. And as you know, one of the reasons why this is our spotlight for this month is because I'm releasing this new Oracle deck, which is called Illuminate. And it's exactly what you're talking about there. It's this idea that we need to shine a light into that darkness. We need to explore our shit. We need to have a willingness to say, well, what's going on with that self-doubt, or what's with that fear, or what's with that, that stuckness I'm experiencing, because we can't actually show up and shine. As I say, if our windows are all clouded over by all this fog, that gets in the way, we might feel ignited about something inside, but part of our job here is actually to clear that other stuff away, to shine a light into the darkness and be willing to face it and not stay in that stuck place anymore. So I'm so glad that you described that idea of fierceness, because I believe that as well, that's needed in such a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as you say, it isn't just for ourselves. It's like we're breaking the bonds, we're breaking the habits of fear for everybody, for our children, for our partners, for the world around us. And, sometimes it's much harder to face fear when we see it in other people, but it can be met in the same way that we meet fear within, like that with love. And that love has to be righteous. It has to be so big that it's bigger than everything else. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're 100% on the same page with that.
Yeah. One of the reasons, as you know, I've used this lighthouse as a framework. And when I first started it, there was only 6 components. There's now 7. And that 7th component was really that idea of spiritual connection, spiritual fierceness, where we could, look within and also look to something bigger than ourselves, connect with something bigger than ourselves on this journey. And that bit didn't come from me until I had some of the other bits in place. Like I needed to work on some of the other things, I think, in order to get to that place to understand the importance of that connection. And so what I wanted to ask you about now is really for people who are maybe new to this idea of spiritual practice, or practicing spiritual fierceness, or learning about intuitive intelligence. For those people who are maybe thinking, I'm not intuitive, I'm not spiritual, I'm not really sure, why this matters to me. Do you have a tip or an idea or something you could say to those people that who are maybe sort of on the beginning part of this journey?
Look, I think it's an interesting thing. For me, it's an inevitability that all paths lead back to that infinite truth. And as you've demonstrated, your path led you to there. And it doesn't matter what our job is or how we show up in the world, we're ultimately going to be led to the truth that there is a higher purpose to our life. And that something bigger than us and our own individual ego is motivating our actions in the world. And that when we become unafraid of that truth, when we line up with that truth, it actually is what elicits or allows inspired action. Because inspiration, as I'm sure you talk about, is just, it's something bigger than me coming into my consciousness, planting these ideas that I'm like, where did that come from? Why did I say I'm going to make an oracle deck? Something inspired me that was bigger than me. My life has a purpose and a meaning that is bigger than just my own little piece of the earth. And that is often about service. So often our desire to serve other people, to help other people, to bring more light into their world is what will trigger our spiritual awakening. My mission is to demystify spirituality, to take it out of the ghetto, to get it out of dogma, and to get it out of that kind of very jargonistic language that actually prevents most people from feeling like they have a place in it. And it's vital that we use language that is inclusive. And so for me, it's really about that idea of when you're at the beginning of your journey, are you willing to simply look to your own actions? If you want to increase your intuition, the fastest way to do that is to go meet your fear. It's no more complicated than that. But meeting our fear is actually the last thing we mostly want to do. We'll, drink all the alcohol or eat all the cake or pick a fight with our boyfriend or, marry the wrong person. We'll do anything we can to avoid looking at our fear. But if we just stopped and made some, we don't even have to make friends with our fear, but just made some space to be curious about fear, we would naturally find that intuitive voice, that inspiration from something bigger than us about the deeper meaning of our life will just come to us. And so you can begin by investigating every choice. Every time you have to make a decision, simply ask yourself this: is it fear or is it love?
Mm.
We can actually never make a wrong choice. And I'm actually teaching a group of amazing people right now. And the question is, what if I get it wrong? What if I make the wrong choice? But, it's like you actually can't, unless you're making a choice from fear. Because even if you make a choice that doesn't line up exactly as you thought it was going to in terms of what you experience in 3D reality, the truth of it is that if it was a choice for love, the universe has your back. And you will be guided to where you're meant to go. So the simplest practice to begin, if you're looking to kind of find your deeper purpose or your connection to that infinite consciousness, is simply start to look to where am I choosing fear and where am I choosing love? And how can I choose love more often?
I love that. I love that answer. And, I didn't know what you were going to say when I asked you that question of where to begin. And I just have to say that I love the fact that is your answer, that you are indeed, walking this talk of taking it out of this big other world and making it every day and making it concrete. Because I know so many people who think, oh, well, I need to meditate and I need to, learn some kind of technique, or there's all these things that we see and hear.
Buy the crystals. And, I love crystals. I love all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not where the power is.
No.
We give meaning to these things. Spiritual bling is like, look at this giant rocket crystal on my hand. I love my spiritual bling, but I don't put that on to get more powerful. And there's no green smoothie I can drink. And there's no practice that I can do. The only thing that we need to do is meet the illusion. And the illusion is fear. And that is the truth of it. Only love exists. And when we start to trust that truth, we make friends with the world. And the world suddenly becomes really friendly.
So you've given us some homework that is both easy and incredibly difficult, because it takes us out of all those rules and all of those things, and it's just something that we can do any day in any way on our own. But it's also,
it requires fierceness.
Scary. Yeah.
Am I willing to choose? Am I willing to forgo my limited self? And that's why the question on the book is: are you ready to surrender to your unlimited self? Because so many of us say that's what we want, but when we start to meet our own power, we're like, whoa, can I actually handle that? What do you mean that no matter what's happened to me, I get to choose how I respond? I get to still create. Like, I don't know if I want that kind of power. And we will hide from our own power a lot of the time. I mean, we all do it, right? Even you and I, amazing creatures. Everyone is a little bit on the run from their own power.
Oh, absolutely.
And eventually we'll overcome that too.
Yeah. It's not our, it's often our fear of shining too bright that is the thing that we're most afraid of.
Yes.
It's not the light itself. It's this
Absolutely.
idea that when we dial it up, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
All right. I do have one more question for you. And that's for women who are maybe further on the journey down this pathway of practicing spiritual fierceness. And, I was going to say earlier, actually, that, though I said I needed to sort of get to the place where I was ready to create more of a spiritual practice, for me, was actually coming full circle back to the beginning, back to who I was when I was young and maybe a little bit more fearless. But anyhow, my question is really for those listeners who are on the journey, who they're practicing, spiritual fierceness, who are, creating a spiritual practice for themselves, who are exploring this. What's next for us? Like, what could we do to do what I call elevate, take the next steps, or to push ourselves maybe a bit further out of our comfort zone so that we can show up in the world with our gifts, with our light in even bigger ways?
Well, the answer to that is shockingly similar to my first answer, because it is absolutely the truth that it is the only impediment between us and knowing our infinite power is fear. But yes, you do get to a point where you can go deeper into meeting that fear because you've switched from fear to love. The dominant program that you're running is no longer fear-based. You're not afraid of the world. You're mostly living in that place of love. And so when fear rises up, you can interrogate it with more fearlessness. So, this is where we start with my priestesses, the women I train, what I call, and this is a term from Vishen Lakhiani, consciousness engineering. So we stop believing that we are passive receivers of our lives, and we start recognizing that we are constructing our reality. This is just quantum physics. There are no watches in the quantum field. Therefore, every feeling that I have is making a choice. And I become vigilant about watching, not my mind, because it's nothing to do with your thoughts. What is actually commanding the quantum realm into being is your feeling state. So it's becoming vigilant about, am I moving into self-pity? Am I moving into self-doubt? Am I becoming the victim? Am I saying that someone else gets to tell me whether this is a good day or a bad day? Or am I actually taking ownership of, I am constructing reality? And if fear shows up for me, what my priestesses say to me now is they high five themselves. It's like, awesome, I can work on this. Like, there's some fear here to get rid of. And it's being vigilant. And that comes from non-negotiable devotional practices. And that does mean that every damn day you say, where is my soul in my life? Is it positioned front and center? Because if I'm thinking that I am engineering my reality from 3D reality terms, then that simply means, like, if I run around and do more, I'm going to get more. No. The more time I spend meeting the infinite in meditation, in prayer, in contemplation, in reflection, all of these practices are where I'm actually creating my reality from. So we've dived deep down the rabbit hole there very quickly, but it happens very quickly. Of course, we start to meet the truth of the world, which is energy first, physical second. All science, Karen, all science, nothing woo-woo here. And when we understand that it is simply the frequency that we hold in a dominant way that will determine how reality shapes itself around us, then we understand how important it is that we don't let ourselves slip into our darker feelings. When you have the tools to put in place, it's not about putting a happy Band-Aid. I'm not talking about false happy here. I'm talking about, there's fear here. I'm standing my ground. I'm saying, come on, bring it. Let's do this. Let's meet this fear, because I know my true nature is bliss. So I am willing with fierceness to meet that fear and move out of my slump, move out of my fear, of my loathing and all of those other things, and actually become, the warrior of light. So, that's an advanced practice, but it's not so far away from the first practice. You see, it's just a continuum.
New layers.
Yeah.
What's your number one tool to explore with? Do you like to journal? Do you like to use oracle cards? Do you like to talk it out? Like, what do you love to do?
Well, my specific technique is called the micro method, and that is something that I created, and it is exactly as we said. So it's a very simple, and I can share the video with your tribe, a very simple process that takes about 5 minutes. You basically, say you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, I just feel really flat. I don't know why, but it's less than I want it to be. Or you walk into the bathroom and your partner's socks are on the floor. They're on the floor every day, but that day you feel like you want to murder him. You feel rage in you like you've never felt before. Or you're picking up your kids from school and they're dragging their feet and they're not getting in the car and you've got somewhere to be, and you just feel this absolute despair. Okay, all of these are symptoms of fear, and that fear is showing you that something is out of congruence. So instead of ignoring it, instead of eating chips or buying booze on the way home from school pickup or whatever else you might have previously done, you just go into a very simple process, close down your eyes, take a deep breath, and you say, what's beneath that feeling? And because you've been practicing this for a time, you're going to, and it gets easier, it's like a muscle, you're going to hear, feel, see, or know, whatever your dominant way of receiving your intuition is, what that fear beneath that feeling is. So let's say it's your partner's socks on the floor, and you tune in, you go, okay, what is deeper than that feeling? And instantly in my mind I have fear of rejection. And it's like, whoa, we've gone from socks on the floor. What I'm really afraid of is fear of rejection. And what we're actually doing is we're tuning into the subconscious basement. And the subconscious basement is where 95% of our life is created from. And mostly we don't know what the hell is down there. And so we're ricocheting from one drama to the next. So we're actually going on a journey to become explorers. Then we use a tool called heart coherence, which comes from the Institute of Heart Math. And we transmute that fear. So it's basically, what am I feeling? What's the fear beneath that? And here's the practice to transmute it. And the practice is very simple. It's really gratitude. If you're feeling really overwhelmed by the fear, you just feel gratitude for that fear. You feel compassion for that fear. That fear is like a abused, lonely little baby that just needs your love. And you just hold that fear in your heart and you say, thank you for showing me where something is not quite right. And if you're feeling really robust and you're ready to kick it to the curb, you go into gratitude. Go into gratitude for everything. But this is, you know, profound consciousness engineering. And I know it's not a short tip, but it is worth learning because it's going to change the world, I have no doubt. And I'm so excited that it's available freely to anyone who wants to learn it. So I'll share it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to make sure to have that link to that below this video so people can grab that. What I love about that, and thank you for sharing it, is that my brain, the way that my brain works is automatically ask the question, how? But how? That's lovely, but how? So thank you for giving us a real how, like real, you know, questions to ask ourselves and the tools that we can use, because I think that that's really where the magic can happen for people is, you know, getting out of the talking about space and thinking that's all nice but space and into actual practice. And that's one of the things I love about you. And your book is full of, you know, things like that, questions we can ask ourselves, you know, the heart space that you're talking about here. And I really love that about the way that you teach.
Thank you.
You're not all talk, Lovey, and I love that. I'm a teacher, so I love, you know, what I can see in you is this drive to learn and teach, to be, you know, growing yourself and sharing it as you go. And I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have, as I said, that link below. Again, Ricci-Jane Adams' book, Spiritually Fierce. She's got a gorgeous Facebook group called
I Am Spiritually Fierce.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a great place to have these conversations and connect further. As we were talking, I was like, people need to have this book. So I'm actually going to have, as part of my launch this month, some free copies of this book to give away. So I'll be looking to send this book out to some people because I really think it's just such a perfect starting point and journey point for people who are looking to shine their light in the world, which is what we're doing.
And so much congratulations on your oracle cards. The proofs that I've seen look so beautiful and are really going to help people to meet that power within them. And as you say, illuminate the light into the darkness, because that's what happens when you turn on a light in the dark. Oh my God, the darkness is gone.
That's right. It loses its power with that energy of like, hey, let's explore this. Let's explore this fear. What's really going on here? So we're on the same page with that for sure, because that's what I teach as well. So thank you. I'm so honored to have you here as a guest at the Lighthouse Revolution, shining the spotlight on the topic of spirituality and intuition. You are a dream. Thank you so much for being here. So much love to you. Thanks, everyone. Check out the links below to find out more about Ricci-Jane Adams and also to find out more about the Illuminate Oracle deck that we've been talking about here today. Thanks, everyone.